come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Partu. Joining me today is Milan Jeftik, aka the Russian comic book geek, aka Milan Jeftik 1992, aka the ruiner of dreams and hopes and aspirations.
That's me.
Hi, Milan.
How you doing?
Oh, you know how I'm doing. Anyway, this week we are talking about a review topic, and our review topic is Seven Samurai.
Yep.
Oh, I need like a war drum for the intro this week. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Milan, what made you want to choose this?
I don't know. I just remember it. It's a good film. Now let's just shoot the shit about it a little bit.
Excellent elaboration there. Thanks. That's it. Just fuck it. Yeah, it popped in my head.
Yeah, it's true. What do you expect me to lie? Well, I was ruminating on the nature of the universe, contemplating which topic to choose for this week's edition of the Geeky Gentleman, and then I thought, you know what? We should have a deep philosophical discussion on the nature of the Seven Samurai film.
Yeah, well, like, that doesn't sound unlike all your other justifications for things.
Pretty much, yeah.
So anyway, yeah, Seven Samurai is this movie, like, this is the first time I've ever watched it, and full disclosure, I didn't get the chance to finish it because it's like 3.5 hours long, and I couldn't find a copy till today, before I had to go to work. But I got through, like, at least well over 3/4 of it. But this is a movie that I've always felt like I've heard about a lot, but I've just never sat down and watched. And now that I have watched the majority of it, I gotta say, I think it's good. I think it's a really well told story and everything. But I feel like it's more important for what it's influenced than for what it is on its own.
I disagree. Personally, why I really liked it was because when I first watched it, it was surprising how much it reminded me of my youth, like the movie. No, shut up.
I remember when our village was threatened and we hired some mercenaries. It was a good time.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's not
how I spent my summer vacation.
Really, it does sound a little bit like something you would watch in Russia. It's a very basic plot for most of the people from the third world. Yeah, fucking bandits, fucking raping, stealing our food. Let's just hire a couple of mercenaries, scare them off. Fuck it. None of them. All our men are fucking farmers. We can't deal with this nonsense. Let's get some professional killers in on this.
Yeah. But no, anyway, go on with what you were originally going to say.
It's surprising how much this reminds me of old Soviet era, like, Russian movies. How it's just like peasants acting like peasants. I just believe they just went to a poorer part of Japan and just said, "Dress up in your grandpapa's clothes. Let's film this motherfucker."
Well, like, here's the thing, though. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Is I feel like so much of this movie is... It's so hard to talk about this movie from a modern context, because I watch it and I can't help but think of all the other things that it's totally influenced.
Of course,
it's kind of like... It's kind of like if I were to watch all the adventure movies that Spielberg and Lucas watched after watching Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
That's like, I'm sure that those were good and had their charm and their lovely little bits, but I mean, I've already seen the ultimate version of this.
And it's weird how that kind of happens. How culture tends to just like absorb the old, the adventure pulp fiction of its past, and essentially reprocesses it into something a whole lot newer and more streamlined. Like we see that nowadays with the superhero films.
Yeah, and like I think like John Carter of Mars, that Disney movie that came out a couple years back, I think that's why it didn't really do very well, is because, we've already seen I'm sure it was well done on its own and everything, but we've already seen all this other stuff that it had influenced. And so the story on its own doesn't really do it anymore. We feel like we've already seen it.
Yeah.
It's like watching Planet of the Apes when you already know how it ends. Sure, it's a good movie and all, but if you know that ending, it does take away a lot.
Yeah, it's one of those films that's so ingrained in popular culture and in movie culture and whatever that it's understandable to see. Like, I already watched it. It'll feel like you already watched this same basic film 1,000 times because. If not, story-wise and setting, just in the visual storytelling alone, there's
even an episode of Clone Wars, they did this movie in 20 minutes.
Exactly.
So it's so hard to watch this and just take it completely on its own terms because I'm just seeing what I've seen in all these other places, and it's not the movie's fault that other directors are, I guess, kind of unoriginal in that way.
No, the thing is, most directors, everyone has that movie they watched, that movie they watched that really inspired them visually in their filmmaking, and they're just gonna wanna tell that story again. Like, stories are like memes, There's certain story plots and certain, story structures that are in a way kind of universal. This is, with Seven Samurai, and if you break it down, it's essentially just seven mercenaries that are kind of irrelevant in that time and place. We're mercenaries, but the time of the Great Wars is over, and so we're kind of reduced, from Knights of the Round Table status to just a bunch of fucking mercenaries for hire. We're a bunch of soldiers of fortune now. And it's just it's a very beautifully shot film. It really does remind me of, like, that old school sensibility from, Soviet era filmmaking, that kind of very down to earth, but at the same time shot beautifully type of a thing. Old Soviet films, they were just about the common ideas, common thoughts, common, experience of the working class man back in the old times, but it takes... It mythologizes.
They kind of show the beauty of the everyday in some of the scenes, like when the young samurai is like going around and picking flowers and like lays down in the field and stuff.
Yeah.
And then it also shows, like, one thing I noticed about this movie, particularly when you start getting to the battle scenes, and I think part of it comes from the fact that you obviously don't have professional actors playing a lot of the villagers. You just have extras or people that just happen to live in that area.
Yeah.
I think one of the benefits of that is this movie's so goddamn brutal in parts,
Yeah.
Like I'm actually kind of in the right mood to have watched this because I'm watching through Rurouni Kenshin Manslayer. So I've got that, late era, classical, like medieval Japan meets the modern day kind of feeling, still. And so I'm watching this and like, it's interesting how anime has made everything, like anime and action movies and everything has made everything with samurai seem so artistic and beautiful, and like you paint with the sword basically, and it's like these swift quick motions that like you blink and you miss them. But you watch this and it's like the guy's just swinging and it's like the villagers are just stabbing and stabbing and stabbing, and the guy's like crawling through mud trying to get away from being stabbed, and it's not quick, it's not beautiful, it's not graceful in any way. It's down, it's dirty, it's gritty and grimy.
Yeah, because that's the whole thing. That's the romanticism of the assassin, of the killer. That idea that a mercenary, a soldier, can have a certain beauty to his art. That's the whole point. That's the whole, like back in the day where, mercenaries and wars and murder was so commonplace, bringing up an idea where somebody was so good at killing that he kind of turned it into an art form. And that's just kind of the mysticism of the samurai, somebody who's so cultured, who's so disciplined, that he can kill you and make you fucking applaud as you go down.
Yeah, and that's not here at all.
No,
it shows
the brutality of the fucking actual era. People forget that the world, it still is in places, but for the most part, the world and people, when they're put in these kind of very, peasant-like situations and very down and dirty, chaotic situations, people who just want to live their lives, like, there is violence. When violence happens, it shows it realistically. It's grotesque. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ, they just want to kill a dude. They just want.
Yeah, like I'm reminded of like people complained in the first two Nolan Batman movies that the fighting was way too like shaky cam and just hard to see and didn't look very cool. And the argument a lot of people made was like, well, that's real fighting though. It's not pretty and fun to look at. It's quick and it's harsh and it's, brutal.
Well, that I have a bit of a complaint about that. Like the fighting, yes, I don't know, it's a cool movie and I like the film in itself. But the fighting, I understand where it will come from. Like, you can still have the brutality in hand-to-hand combat, but you don't have to edit it or shoot it like a fucking spastic,
Yeah, I mean, it improves with each movie. The first one is the worst about it, then it gets better in Dark Knight, and then he finally just goes, okay, fine, we'll make it all stylized when we get to Rises. But anyway, no, but you see the point I'm making, where it's like it's much quicker and it's not pretty to look at, and that's what this movie has. It's got its moments where it like takes some time and shows some really beautiful shots. And even some of the sword fights are like when we first meet that really, really skilled older samurai. Not the bald one that acts like a monk, but the other guy. He's got kind of that classic in a field, kill a man with a single stroke kind of thing going for him. But otherwise, this movie's like really just stick your face in the mud kind of thing.
Yeah, and it really shows the diversity of people's fighting styles. Like, you have people there, like, the more educated you are at your art, the more, like, the less effort you have to divulge on, like, killing somebody. Like, it's almost like the more educated you are in the fighting skill, the less strikes you have to give a person to kill him. But if the poorer you are, the less educated you are, the more time you have to kill a man. That's, the further away you can get away from killing a man, like with a bunch of stabs to his fucking chest or whatever, just to make sure he's dead, the less educated you are. So there's a certain commentary on class, I believe. Like,
especially like when they're luring the bandits into the village one by one, and the villagers, even the women, just start swarming them and just hitting them with sticks and spears and stuff. And like, there's that one guy that the women, like he runs into a stable, I think, and the women surround him and like have these, I guess you'd call them rakes or picks or something.
Yeah, like farming equipment. They kill them all.
Yeah, some kind of farming equipment and a hose. That's probably it. It's a weird Japanese version of some tool. I don't know what it is, but anyway, they keep like hitting on him, and he's like this animal in a cage, and he's just getting the shit kicked out of him. It's crazy. And like when they capture one of those scouts, and they bring him to the village, all the samurai are holding them back from like taking the dude apart piece by piece. And then the old lady who lost her son because of bandits the last time they came comes in with one of those same little hoes, and then everyone backs off. It's like, okay, let the old woman get her revenge, but someone has to help her.
Yeah.
Like, that's just crazy.
Well, it's very kind of, it's not crazy. Like, it's surprising how, like, when I hear Westerners talk about this film and how
it's real.
It's real.
It's one of those things where you have to face the reality of people.
Yeah. And it's just like, yes, if you have these bandits are rapists and murderers and they come every year, like whenever the harvest is at its greatest, they come back through that area and take what they're owed, apparently, what they believe they're owed. And essentially, of course they might rape a pretty girl, like, hey, bring me your daughter. Some young man wants to stand up to them, slit his throat, make an example of him. And back then, you didn't have, like police back then. You couldn't just call somebody from the comfort of your home saying, like, please, these people are killing us. Back then you had kings and courts, and you have to fucking go to the inner city, and you have to commission the king for some fucking, some of his soldiers. You have to, like, work out how much you pay him.
You're explaining feudalism.
Yeah, that's it. And it's just like, And then when it's just the idea of people who are so isolated that, you know, they're good people. The people that get attacked...
No, they're not. They're not. The movie doesn't... Like, that's the thing. This doesn't really romanticize any...
That's why I like it, because it's just like...
Yeah, the people, like, there's that scene where they bring in all the samurai equipment, and the one guy who isn't really a samurai makes like, farmers are just as fucking bad as every other person on this goddamn planet. And whenever there's a battle, they go out into the fields, and they steal all the equipment they can, and they kill anybody that they find dying. And, like, instead of helping people, instead of doing the noble thing of helping a dying soldier, they just stick them with their own spear and then steal it, and then take their armor, too.
Well, yeah,
that's just,
you know...
Like, nothing gets to be sacred in this movie. It is so... Like, I keep saying brutal and grimy, but those words don't feel like they capture it.
Yeah, because brutal and grimy, you think of, like, Frank Miller, very extravagant type of violence, like, we're gritty. Well, this is just like, it's all in the daylight, it's so open, it's just so ridiculously real. It's like there's a cause and a causation to this violence. It's not like it's trying to be violent to impress anyone, it's just like, this is how it is. And it's very cutthroat. It's like, that's the thing that I appreciate about old films like this. It's very cutthroat. They're just like, this is what happens, we get the man, we slit his throat. We don't want to do this, but it's a necessity. He has hurt us, and to get our revenge, we must, you know, the old woman comes out with the sickle. And it's like, well, you know, her son is dead. We shall give her, you know, time to take her revenge on the man who killed her son. And it's just some these very subtle, unspoken rules about violence that a community has to be all have to agree upon. And it's not like, it's almost instinctual. It's not like, well, it's just the concepts of basic honor. Like, yes, the old woman wants to take her revenge. Let her have it. You know?
And, like, the old man wants to die in his house. He doesn't want to like, fight in the village or stay in the village with the women. He just wants to die in his mill if it's going to burn down to the ground. It's like, just... There's a stubborn bullheadedness and a kind of just this really rough edge, this sandpapery kind of feeling to this whole film. It really is just showing, like, life was fucking hard. Like, that's all it comes down to, is just, it was fucking hard to live like this.
Yeah.
And you got it easy nowadays in comparison.
Oh, definitely. You know, back then, there was an actual sense of community. People had the very specific jobs that they had to fill. You know, men, women, old people, children, everyone had a place because everyone had to work. If you wanted to survive, you all had to know that your next door neighbor. It's just, you know, tribes of human clumping together to make their survival better. And it's,
I know you don't really like John Green, but he did, like, he does those Question Tuesday videos where, like, people ask him questions in comments, and then he'll spend a whole video answering them. And someone asked him at one point, if you could live in any century, what would it be? And he goes, this one. The past sucks. Like, living in any other century besides right now would be terrible in comparison to how I'm living now.
Yeah.
Like, even in Azarella's Wonder Woman, there's this great scene with Dionysus and Hermes where they're at a restaurant, and Dionysus makes the point, 1,000 years ago, your average mortal right now would be living like a king. Like, I don't know, the quality of life your average mortal has right now would only be fit for a king. And not some lowly king. We're talking a king of kings. And that's just fascinating when you think about just how standard of living has evolved throughout human history. And it all comes from that kind of... It's certainly not American, but I think America has really jumped onto it to make it their philosophy. This idea of, you know, making sure your children live a better life than you did.
Yeah, that's the whole point. I mean, it's something I've been thinking about recently. Like, I've been watching a lot of white people complain about things movie. You know, the office worker who's just like, I'm tired of them making a machine out of me. And sure, that struggle, you know, is engaging in its own way, but Personally, I would fucking, like, for people in my social class and background, Eastern European immigrants, there's a certain level of just like, I would fucking love a fucking quiet office job. You come in, you do your stuff in a little box, you get the shit done, you go home.
Yeah, because like you have such a hard time. Like just a couple weeks ago we were talking about Salinger, and you just fucking cuss Salinger out every time Catcher in the Rye comes up. It's like, oh, he's just a white kid complaining. I'm like, yeah, I get it. The kid's complaining about, first world problems essentially, but there's this idea of relative problems. It's not like there's this. It's weird to argue that someone should just be happy because what they have isn't as bad as what other people have, and I can certainly see that point of view sometimes, but at the same time, I don't like the idea of just dismissing people's problems.
Yeah, it's not dismissing people's problems, because it's just it depends on what social level you are. People from the lower classes, they look at the middle class as like, yes, like my mother came here with nothing, and that was her dream to get to middle class, so she doesn't have to break her back every day.
Well, yeah.
But let me finish.
Go ahead.
And it's just like, and that I'm not saying, fucking middle class people like have nothing to complain about. Sure, they do. Their struggles are a little bit more basic and domestic and certainly boring. But that's just because they have enough to do with they have a base of operations that is well stocked. And for most people, that's well enough. For most people who grew up with little, like having that basic concept of like, I have just enough to keep me and my family perfectly happy, just enough, And for middle class, they look at the upper classes and they say, I wish I didn't have to work hard for a lot of this, because middle class people do work. Their work may not be that labor intensive, but it still serves a purpose. It just helps.
Yeah, can I make a point about what you're talking about?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, you're talking about the idea of the hierarchy of needs. Like as a human, and I disagree with this ultimately, but it's a very tempting idea. As a human being, like your ultimate need is food and water. Like those are the two things you absolutely need before you can do anything else. After that, you need a place in which to keep your food and your water and to sleep without dying. And then once you get that, then you can start worrying about, where you're going to get more food from. And so you slowly build up until you have, a quote-unquote life. So that's where you get, like, farming and stuff comes from. And then over time, you get further and further to where you don't have to worry about farming anymore. You've got a consistent supply in from, like, a third market thing. Do the headphone thing again, Milan. I'm starting to echo. You got a consistent supply coming in, so you have other options at that point. And so then you can move on to more higher-minded things, and you can start to worry about, money, and once you're safe about money, and your health's all good and everything, then you can worry about things like self-fulfillment, and that's where art starts to get invented. And ultimately, I disagree with that, because at the end of the day, when you're sick, when you're dying, when you've got nothing, is when you start to honestly think about those things, in my mind. You don't think about the importance of life until you're looking at it from your death, or from, a point at which you're at the lowest point of life. From your deathbed, when you're sick in the hospital or something, that's when you start to actually reflect on life. So ultimately, I disagree with that, but I see where that thought process comes from.
I know, and it's just like, some people, this might seem like a very crude thing. I don't believe this myself personally, but if you give people the opportunity to be good, they will be good. But if you give them the opportunity to be bad, there's two choices. Like the road where to be bad will get you like a better chance of survival. And I believe that people can choose to do good despite what's best for them. And but sometimes.
But it's rare.
It's rare. It's very rare. But when it does happen, that's what makes it. That's that whole little.
That's what makes it special.
Yeah, that's what makes it special. And the thing with art, I don't really agree with that. That but of course you need your basic, forms of living. But I believe art and thinking about life and mythologizing experience starts out, it happens, doesn't, like, of course, it happens in every social class, of course. But, with, with, with the poor, with the poor,
self-fulfillment, like I said,
let me finish. But I understand where, like, artistic pursuits are really looked down on in blue collar areas and poorer areas. Like, I'm an artsy fartsy motherfucker. I like comic books. I like to write. I like to make audio dramas. I'm going to film school now, and all my family is rather poor, come from poor Eastern European backgrounds. And, like, everyone I said, like, they always tell me, like, don't do this. Become an engineer, become a plumber, become an electrician, become butcher, get a very practical blue-collar job that will guarantee you gradual payment. If you, like, that's the thing, if you're poor, and if you come from a poor background, your parents say, don't become an artist, don't go to college, it's a waste of time, get a good trade, so you can have money. And it's that basic idea of that, like, you have to think about your own well-being first before you have to, before you can go into art and
before you can do something that's self-fulfilling.
Exactly.
And I certainly disagree with that idea, but I still see where that line of thinking comes from, and I see why people ascribe to it. But like I said, when you're on your deathbed, that's when you think about life more than anything else. You're of course thinking in other ways about how to extend your own life and everything, but more so you're thinking about what your life has meant. And it's only when you're losing your life, or when you feel like you might, or your life's in danger, or your life's being changed forever, that you start to reflect on those kind of things. You don't think about your life when you're, pushing pencils at work. You're thinking about pushing pencils at work.
Well, I think it has to do with the nature of human biology. Humans, like, we can live forever. If, science will hopefully eventually lead us to having, like, 100 years more of life.
But nobody wants to live forever.
No, it's not that. Of course they do. People want to live forever. Everyone says, oh, you would hate being immortal.
No, fuck you. Social Security is already at, like, just this unbalanceable mass. What are we gonna do if people live to be 1,000? Fuck that.
Well, at least shortly, if we do invent longer lasting life for basic humanity, then, we'll just overpopulate the Earth. Like the ending of,
like that one episode of Star Trek?
No. That fucking movie that recently came out, it was the same guy who directed District 9. It was with Matt Damon.
I don't know. Elysium?
Elysium, yeah. Like, they, essentially all of Earth has turned into Mexico.
Thanks.
And, poor elements of, everything's fucking brown and whatever, everyone's speaking Spanish. It's true. That's the whole thing. And it's a...
I get what you're saying.
But that's the parable. But in the end of the movie, spoiler warning, they send down robots to, essentially send out healing machines. Can just fix cancer, fix anything like that. And it's essentially, that's like, you just doom the world. It's already overpopulation, and you've introduced this magical fix-all cure, and there's barely enough to go around anyway. And if those Elysium satellites, if they made those in mass and actually, after the human species reaches a certain level of life and a certain, like, I believe a species in a habitable planet like ours, it has to get to a certain degree of populace and technological development before it has to, go out into the universe, because then your home...
Well, you're just talking about expansionism.
Exactly. Sometimes, once all your shit that is used up, you need to go out and find new places to settle. And
you need living space.
Exactly. And that's why, if humanity doesn't invest in a proper space program and actually get large amounts of, people onto other planets, I believe the human race will just keep expanding to the point where, racial diversity will become just a thing because more people are going to become intermixed, but the populace will expand to such a degree where we'll have to expand out from our basic terrestrial, neighborhood, because otherwise we'll just choke on our own fat and die off.
Well, I think that's an interesting point to transition to Star Wars, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's Star Trek too, but certainly Star Wars, because that seems to have been what has happened. Is just all these different alien races are interacting because they've just all spread out across the galaxy, and it's just this. It's in this kind of era of merchants and trading where you just have as long as you can get a ship, you can go anywhere and do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah. That whole idea.
And I think that's certainly got obviously Lucas took from a bunch of different things, but elements of that are in here.
Exactly.
If you've got money, you can go hire a fucking amazing samurai that can help you, save your village or fight some guy for you.
Yeah, like that's the thing. People who know how to kill things will always be employed, regardless. Well,
there's the ultimate practical skill, Milan.
Well, yeah, it's true. I mean, that's why we have mercenaries even now. Like the mob is just a bunch of low-level warlords. Old gangbangers in the hood are just low-level warlords. Like if this whole outlining structure of society wasn't there, of course, those basic mafiosos will become warlords. They will be able to kill more people and not be noticed, and garner more power. And yeah, I mean, I recently watched this film, Training Day. It's set in the
God.
Yeah, it's set in the 90s in Los Angeles. And it really,
dude, everyone knows what Training Day is.
Yeah, of course. But it's just it's so. I was high when I watched it, and it was a rather excellent experience. But it's just it's shot just imagine that shot where they go to the Mexican gangbanger's place, or to any kind of neighborhood where there's a lot of local military presence, like a bunch of guys with guns, essentially. That's the closest thing to feudalism the first world will see. It's just well, you need guys with guns because there are other guys with guns that want to take our shit and want to encroach in our territory. And that's the thing. That's the thing every young, poor person is taught. I come from basic peasant class, and we have to, you see a warlord, you see a mafioso, you be respectful to him. He is a man who is skilled in the ways of violence. He must be respectful, be nice, try to get onto his good side, because if you get on his bad side, he will kill you, and he will know how to get rid of the body. And he will, rape your daughters or your mother or whatever, That's why, it's as, and, a bunch of, middle class people why don't you go to the police? Well, the police are corrupt, you can, but if you do, they can't protect you or your family, not really.
There's this great episode of Boondocks where they're talking about don't snitching, and this guy snitches and everything, and they end up, locking away some low-level guy because of it, and he's the cops are you did a great job, thanks a lot. You're a real help to this community. He's wait, aren't you going to put me into witness protection? Oh, no, we don't really do that. That's only with federal crimes. And then they just, push him out of the police station onto the street. Yeah, it's one of those things where when you can't depend on the established order, and that's what's going on in Seven Samurai. It's really briefly discussed where they we can go to the magistrate. He's supposed to. All right, quick review for those that don't know how feudalism works. You have the lowest class, the serfs, the peasants, whatever. Mostly farmers or really low skilled merchants. They pay taxes on their land to a lord or a in this case it was a magistrate, and that would be usually a guy that lives in a decent sized castle, and those guys would often be knights, and this is in English feudalism, and they'd be samurai, types of samurai, and Eastern feudalism, and then those knights or samurai or whatever, those lords pay their own share of taxes to the higher king of the land, and sometimes you'll have, you know, you'll have another layer between those two. I believe that's what a baron is. Anyway, so they'll pay up, and so that's how feudalism works. So if the people in an area are being harassed by bandits, it's actually the magistrate's responsibility to take care of the bandits, because, you know, that's what they're paying him the taxes for. Of course, the magistrate in this movie isn't fucking doing that because he just doesn't care about these peasants. And so, you know, your comparison to corrupt police is completely it. The police don't care about that area, about certain areas. They just abandon certain areas and don't care. That's why crime is really high in some neighborhoods, because, like, how many cops are there? I don't know, one goes through on, like, the main stretch every couple hours, but that's about it. They cordon off a corner whenever someone gets shot and do their little evidence gathering and then leave. You know, it's just shit like that. There's no real effort put into it.
Yeah, like, that's the thing. I mean, you have to, you know, have some basic underlining of society. I mean, like, this is what I find really interesting. When there was a South Park episode that discussed this, made fun of the whole hippie movement of, like, yeah, man, it's just a bunch of middle class kids who want to rebel against their rich parents who work to get them there. Just going like, you know what, man, we're gonna start our own society. Well, you're already in a society. You're already in a basic social structure. Why don't you try to improve it? Nah, we'll start our own, man. We'll have a baker and a butcher. You already have a baker and a butcher. You have the basic outlines of society. You just have to actually get involved and try to change it from the inside out instead of complaining about it like a little drone. You know? And it's just like, why do you complain? You have a PS4. I don't have a PS4. I want a PS4, but I can't afford it. I can't afford a good TV, and I have to make do with shit. And that's and people say like, oh my god, like fucking kid, like, I don't know. It's just recent. I guess it's just what happens every time college kids happen. You know, they always realize like, oh my god, we want to help out the poor, but then they have to get jobs, and then once they live life a little bit longer, the poor get frightening. You know?
It's funny, I was watching today at work, I walked in on two guys having a conversation. Fast food workers in New York protested and stuff, and were able to convince McDonald's in New York to raise the minimum wage at that area to $15 an hour. And so I walk into the control room, and two of the guys there are bitching about that, and they're like, God damn, what the fuck? I don't make $15 an hour. They shouldn't be getting paid $15. And I'm like, why the fuck are you mad at them? They got their shit. Why don't you go bitch to Bill? Or who's my boss. Like, why don't you go bitch to him? Why are you bitching at them for getting good shit? It's not their fault. It's not their fault that they actually took initiative, motherfucker. You're just sitting in here complaining that you're not making as much as them. You know why? Because you're not the one complaining to the right people.
Exactly. You know, it's just like...
It's that crabs. It's that, like, crabs in a bucket thing. You ever heard that?
Yeah, or just Scottish people. Like, if you listen...
Hold on. So if you have a crab in a bucket, there's no way it's going to get out. But if you have a bunch of crabs in a bucket, then one of the crabs will actually be able to get out. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
No shit. If you have a crab in a bucket, it'll always be able to get out. But if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket, none of them will get out, because one will start to, and then the rest will pull it back in.
Yeah.
It's like this perfect metaphor for society.
Yeah. And it's just like if you listen to Grant Morrison, like, once again, it always has to do with Grant Morrison. If you listen to him talk about Scotland and where he grew up, it's just like, oh yeah, like Scottish people are apparently like these horrible dour cunts that just like hate any kind of success. Like, you know, it's just like, oh, you got out, you fucking sell out. It's like, I make money, bitch. I am making money. I have fucking resources to waste. I have resources to waste, bitch. Fuck you. You should be fucking happy for me. You fucking backstab and stab the race in the back piece of shit. Just because you're a failure doesn't mean I have to. I'm gonna get my
Yeah,
kids through college. You piece of shit.
Yeah, exactly. It's that idea of trying to shame someone for doing well. That's like, I think that's why nerds or like kids. I had that too, and I had a little bit of that in high school. And I'm not making any point right now because I keep switching what I'm going to say. All right, I had a little bit of that in high school. Like I remember one day. All right, so 1942, the Japanese attacked America off the coast of Oregon. The attack was easily repelled and everything, and that is the only attack in World War II that took place on American soil. And that was that's more or less what my history teacher said in freshman year. No, in 8th fucking grade. And everyone's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Fucking Pearl Harbor, man. What about Pearl Harbor? You forgot about Pearl Harbor. And I get up as I'm like throwing something away, and I say, Pearl Harbor happened in Hawaii, and Hawaii wasn't a state yet. And everyone's like, oh, you fucking nerd, blah, blah, blah. And the teacher's like, hey, he's the smartest one in the room right now, so y'all need to shut up. It's just like that mentality of, oh, you're smart, so that's bad. You proved that you're better than the rest of us, so instead of being happy for you, we gotta put you down because that makes us feel bad. We can't be happy for someone else.
Yeah, it's just like this idea that you have to fail just as much as everyone else. Like, that's the whole... Like, I like a lot of black people, and it's just like you hear... Like, I recently read this book called How to Be Black. And it's just like, it's a really fun little read, and and it just talks about how like black people have to measure, like essentially fluctuate their blackness depending on who they're talking to.
Yeah, code switching.
Yeah, code switching. I do that as well. Like when I talk to my family, I talk like this, like hello mama, hello papa, как ты, здравствуйте. But when I talk to somebody, like when I go into the to the city, I have to talk like this. I like, hello, my name is Milan. Nice to meet you. Oh my God, you sound American. Yes. Well, if I sound American, you'll actually pay attention to me. And it's just like that's the thing you have to do. And it's just like, and it's kind of sad. And it's just like how. And it talks about
it's just what society demands from people. It's really weird.
Yeah. And how black
and I think
just how black people like put down their own people for succeeding. And I'm like, why would you do that? Like that's the thing. You're in Russian culture, you're only a failure until you prove them wrong. Like once you succeed, everyone's like, "Oh, I knew he was going to be good." And, like while you're trying, you're like, "You stupid, get a job and proper like a good job, don't go to school, don't waste your money." But when you actually make something of yourself, everyone's like, "Oh, I knew it. You're a good boy. You're a good boy. I knew you were special." But black people, I think, have a similar thing, but they just continue to shit on the parts of their race that actually managed to get out of the ghetto. I'm like, you should be fucking congratulating those people. They fucking got out. You want...
Well, I think there's this weird shift that has happened in which we glorify that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know. I don't like that argument though. I don't have anything right off the top of my head to go against it, but at the same time, I really reject that argument.
Like wait.
But let's get back to Seven Samurai on its own. No, I think this movie does bring up a lot of really interesting social issues though. That idea like no one will help the poor farmers because there's no money and there's no glory in it. And I love that the old man's solution to that problem is find hungry samurai. We're down on our luck. Find someone who's down on our luck that'll be sympathetic to us and be willing to help. Yeah. And like, there's that great scene with the when they're hiring the different samurai, and the one guy goes, the plight seems noble, and I sympathize with the farmers, and I'm hesitant, and I do think that we actually will have a really good chance, but more than anything else, what's making me want to participate in this is your character. And he's talking to the main samurai guy. I'm like, yeah, it's just that mentality of actually wanting to help someone else out because it's the right thing to do. And that's what makes that disillusionment moment where we see that these villagers have been killing, soldiers every chance they get for possibly generations because there's so much damn armor and stuff. It's like that one of the samurai goes, God, now I want to kill them all. It's just that idea of like, yeah, there's no pretty side. Everyone's got their shit, but it's being able to look past that. It's being able to see, you know, maybe someone did something bad in the past, but that doesn't mean they deserve to be treated like shit. You know, maybe their situation called for it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, at a certain point, that's the whole point. Like, when you try to help somebody and you find out, wait, it's just kind of painting people with a broad brush. Just like, man, you don't know that. I mean, you don't know how they live. You know, this is just like, sometimes
it's so weird. It is
Yeah.
so fucking weird to have this conversation with you, and you do not get the point of any of John Green's books. This is the most frustrating fucking conversation right now.
Like, what do you mean?
Just shit. Like, that's the argument you're making right now, that people are more complex than how we imagine them, is like the entire point of every John Green book, and you just fucking glaze over it and just cannot see past the surface of the story.
How do I do that?
You do, though. You're like, oh, all of John Green's books are just a white boy that's a fill-in for him pining after some girl. I'm like, no, they're about imagining people complexly.
Oh, not really. I mean, like, it's a good. Like,
No,
I like John Green. I like John Green. Whatever. He's
you fucking hate his books, you know. Like, you went on a fucking rant about it and just fucking criticized the shit out of them. And then I could tell you didn't finish reading any of them.
I finished reading. Paper Towns was just like, I guess it was okay.
Paper Towns isn't my favorite, but still, like, you just complained about, like, oh, all it is just, like, it was so funny, because it's like, in complaining about it, you completely missed the point of it. Like, oh, Paper Towns and all of John Green's books are just little fill-in characters for him as he pines after some girl. I'm like...
Well, isn't that the truth? I mean, it's just like...
I mean, fair enough. It is a white boy that's pining after a girl in a lot of his books. I'll grant you that. But I cannot think of a writer or creator, for that matter, that doesn't kind of use the same formula for everything. You know? Often they go back and they do the exact same types of things. It's called having a style. But anyway, I don't know. I just find it funny because, like, you fucking hated it and you just made his argument. So I find that amusing.
Well, I don't know. I guess so. I don't really see it, but yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Not projecting what you expect someone to be and taking them on their own terms. Was that not the exact argument you were just making?
Yeah, I was, but John Green...
I don't know. Hearing someone out and trying to imagine them complexly?
I do that, though. Like, it's just...
I know you do that. It's just... It was so funny, because you just, like, were criticizing the shit out of his books by completely missing the point of his books.
I guess so. I don't know. It's just like... I get it, man. It's just his delivery system for this particular concept doesn't really appeal to me all that much.
Yeah, because, like, you have such a thing about, like, first world problems for you. You just can't, like, look past it. It's like we were talking about earlier, like, oh, I would love to be turned into a machine for corporate America. That would be the greatest thing ever.
It would be, though. You literally just get in there, do your thing, and leave. People turn that into their lives. I'm like, no, it's just the thing you do to get paid. It's like, you know, it's just a basic, a decent, you know, source of income for you.
Yeah, but what you're missing about it is that it's draining you mentally and physically so that you have nowhere else to funnel your ability.
Well,
it takes a toll and demands upon you, is the argument that's being made there.
You know, that's what corporations is it's a type of psycho cult, I believe. It leeches the personality and the effort and the time from people. It's like a corporation, in a way. It's almost like a god thing. It's essentially an anthill for things to happen. You know, it's just a bunch.
But that's the point that's being made, though, Milan, is that it's just, it takes away from you, it degrades you, and so the idea of being part of that is horrific to a lot of people.
Well, I guess I agree with that. I mean, but I don't know. It just seems like easy work to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, no one would do it if it wasn't easy, but the point is, it's taking away from other things you could be doing.
Of course.
You're not
Well,
self-actualizing.
well, and that's all has to do with you, isn't it? Like, it all depends where your priorities lie. I mean, if you just want to make enough not to die, or you want to, go and do your thing that you want to do, like, that's two different things. You have to establish a base of operations before you can actually go forth and get your shit together.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's an interesting conversation. I think it's so weird because I did not expect to be talking about this kind of stuff, but it is all there in the movie.
Oh,
isn't
definitely.
It?
That it all, the movie is the bedrock from which this conversational vine has sprung from. You know?
Yeah, and you watch it, and it's just, as well as being brutal as shit, it's also just so biting of how little things have changed. Like, it's one of those fun things to do throughout history is just look at one of those, here's a wacky situation that happened, and here's how people dealt with it thousands of years ago, and then look at something from a year or two ago. And a perfect example, you can read some of the flyers that were put up around cities during the bubonic plague. And it's and you can look at actions that city leaders took to protect against it and yada yada. And then you can look at Donald Trump's tweets during the Ebola crisis, quote unquote crisis. There's this historical source about a ship with one person on it that had the plague. And, the city wouldn't let it dock, and they waited out, and, they let it sit out in the bay for, 3 months as every single person died on it, mostly from starvation, only a couple from plague. And then you look at, Donald Trump's tweets, and he's all we gotta ban all the travel from fucking any African country, even though Africa is such a big country that in Libya, where the biggest crisis was happening, to, fucking Uganda or not Uganda, because that's actually close, to fucking South Africa is greater than the distance from fucking England to New York. It's just you look at the kind of mentality that existed from there. No flights, no travel from Africa. It's so nothing has changed throughout history and about the way in which people react to things. And then you look at shit like this about the way in which people are acting and the way society was structured. And, we think we've come so far and we're living at such a higher standard. But in reality, people are still people.
Yeah,
and
just because
their mentality doesn't change.
Yeah, just because we have
their circumstances.
Yeah, just because we have cooler shit doesn't mean the animal in itself has changed all that much. I mean, if you think about from a deep time perspective, humanity's quote unquote evolution, technological evolution, it's only been less than 100 years before this. Think only 20 years ago. I mean, you give an iPhone, the thing that I have in my fucking pocket right now, to somebody at that point in time, they will think you're a fucking spy or a space alien. Computers back then were the size of a fucking, a full room. Now it's small enough.
No, not 20 years ago. It was the 90s.
Well 30. Oh, fuck. The 90s were 20 years ago, man.
Right. You just made everyone feel old, Milan.
No, dude, Kevin Smith, I watched Friday a couple of weeks ago, and I'm the same age that Ice-T was when he filmed Friday.
That's weird, right?
I know, I'm 22 years old.
Or how about this? Ice-T makes family movies now.
So does Eddie Murphy. How old is Eddie Murphy?
Eddie Murphy's more forgivable. He's been doing that off and on. The whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those weird things where you look at the progress of technology and we certainly are moving faster, but ultimately, is it that big a deal?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, and
that's actually one of the things that bothered me about Star Trek. To be fair, it's got a pretty good argument. It's got a pretty good thing on its side, but at the same time, all right, so Star Trek Next Generation takes place in 2466, I think, is when it starts out. And then like, so that's like 400 years into the future from right now, and 450 years or so. No, 400 years from when 1966, when TOS was first on the air. So you think about it, it's like, wow, that really doesn't seem like that long of a time to develop the technology to fucking cruise around the universe or around the galaxy or whatever. And fucking teleport and, just magically make food appear. But then you think about it and like, alright, so 1960, 400 years before that, we had muskets. That's probably the only significant piece of technology that existed, which is crazy.
I mean, that's the thing. Our technology keeps evolving and evolving because smart people know how to make shit, and clever people know how to distribute it for money. I mean, and that's like the back. You have to feed this. Like it's. I used to be a lot. You have to feed the beast. Reading a lot of Grant Morrison, and I used to be a lot into the occult, and thinking about things in that kind of deep time perspective and adding that kind of mystical, not mystical, but that mystical in the way of changing somebody's psychology type of mystical. And it's just like seeing, like, we need to catch up, psychologically speaking, to our level of technology. I mean, I think that's going to happen soon because the internet has allowed people from all over the world to have conversations and record that conversations. It's just like you're from fucking New York. You're, no, that's Bill. I mean, you're from Fort Wayne or whatever. And I'm from fucking Australia. And we're having this conversation like 20 years ago. We'd have to be pen pals, like wait months and months on end to have our messages, even basic outlines of our days.
Send shit. You'd be like, I forgot to send a letter. I'd be like, I think my pen pal's dead.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, but now we're pen pals.
You'd be the worst pen pal ever, Milan.
I would totally be the worst pen pal. But I'm just like, it's just so strange that we're, like, our ways of communicating with each other collectively as a species has improved to such a point where I can go out and talk to somebody in Uganda, probably somebody rich in Uganda, but all over the world there's somebody who lives there who I can have a conversation with and I can talk about their experience. I can download courses, college courses off the internet for free. I can garner a basic level of education from the internet alone by going out and pirating, textbooks that are mandatory on a Harvard level of education. You can get, if you work at it, you can find great things to think about. And I think this interconnected level of thought that's going to occur pretty soon. I mean, you have kids nowadays, children. My little sister, who is 6 years old, can use an iPad better than me. She, you see babies, like back in the 90s, it was like, oh, you let the television raise your child and you get Kevin Smith. What happens when you have a child that knows, who's so integral, it's so integrated into this, technological idea where they can use an iPad ambidextrously. They can communicate on the internet. They can surf the waves of information from when they were babies. Like, I still remember digital fucking. I grew up with videotapes in Moscow. I had to fucking wank to fucking paper magazines. Imagine fucking future generations where this interconnected technology gets to such a point where, it's interesting to comprehend, to think about what will the future people be. Like, will we get to a certain... It's just like, this is insane!
Like, you're much more hopeful about people than I am, and big surprise there. I mean, I don't know. There was this really funny meme that I saw shortly after Age of Ultron came out. And it was just a picture of Ultron, and it said, spent 2 seconds on the internet, decided humanity had to be extinct. See, I don't know, I don't have that perspective on it. Like, Star Trek was an enjoyable series for me to watch. I got through the first 2 series now. But ultimately, I find it really naive and just really overly optimistic, and I think you need a more cynical viewpoint on things. Because I think ultimately people have proven one thing throughout their history, and that is they're really good at being shit. You know, they're really good at taking, you know, awesome stuff and just being shit, you know?
Well, that's where the idea of Superman comes in. I mean...
Yeah, certainly. But I don't know, that's just the one thing I've always been much more cynical on people. And you know, I don't have like a specific reason why, just general interaction with people, I find them to be kind of shitty from time to time.
Well, that's the thing.
You know,
I mean, people
not their
come...
fault.
Yeah. I guess it's a naivete. Like, I think you're rather naive when you consider that. People who are very cynical and who are very young, I find to be very, like, not even, like, cynical people in general, I find them to be kind of childish in a way.
I don't think it's childish.
Let me explain. It's just like people, well, people can be shitty sometimes. I mean, yes, of course, most people can be shitty and will be shitty, regardless, you know, if the opportunity is given to them. But that's not what surprises me. That's just my basic interaction with people. What really gets me is when bad people choose to do good things. It's when people, like, regardless of their situation, choose to do the right thing. That in itself should be fostered. That idea, like I guess you're more of a Batman and I'm more of a Superman, because, like, it's like this thing. Those are the modern, you know, dynamic Chernobog, Bellybog concepts in our world today. They're essentially gods, and you use them to talk about ideas. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Let me just talk about this.
No, you've been going for like 10 minutes. You made your whole speech about technology and perfection and all that shit. My turn. No, see, I find the cynical viewpoint to just... I feel it's more honest, though. I feel like the optimistic viewpoint is certainly more admirable, and it's something to appreciate and, you know, enjoy, and when it turns out to be right, it's great. But that's the thing, is it often doesn't. It's so often that, like, we hope for the best from people, and we do the trust but verify thing, and ultimately it doesn't work out, and we're always left disappointed. Whereas I feel like being cynical is better because, or not better, I feel like being cynical is more honest, with the added benefit of getting to be pleasantly surprised every so often.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I guess it's more practical in a way, but I think it's just like, it's just, for me, it seems like if you're going to be alive and if you're going to live your life, you might as well try to look for the best in people. If you just expect people to be shitty all the time, then, like, what's the point of fucking living? I mean, sure, being pleasantly surprised is nice, but I'm gonna hope for the best I'm gonna talk to the best in a person, and sure, that person might spit that kindness right back in my face, or say something stupid, but regardless of that, if that person turns out to be a shit person, well, I'm just gonna go, well, I'm sure he's just having a bad day, or if he continues to be an asshole, I just disassociate myself from him. I get that, you know.
But at the same time, I think that the cynical viewpoint on things, and cynicism is, like I said, it's very honest. It's, you accept people on their own terms. You don't put anything on them one way or the other. You expect the worst. You might get the best.
Well,
and
you are putting a certain perspective on people regardless of a thing. You expect
and you're doing it either way. Then, though, is if you're going to use that argument, you're doing it
really.
Either way.
I think it's just holding.
No, if you're expecting the best from people, you're still putting an expectation on them.
Yeah. Well, it's not an I guess it's the best way to live life is to see people as people and not see it from a more what's the word?
Yeah, and I think
amoral perspective. It's just people gonna be people, and you just talk to the best in them. You know. That's
I get that, but I think that cynicism is an honest thing where you can certainly hope for the best from people, but you should be prepared for the worst. It's that old thing. Prepare for the worst, for the best.
Of course.
And I think that's a cynical philosophy, though. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And, like, the benefit of being cynical is you get to be pleasantly surprised, whereas optimists are constantly disappointed. If you always hope for the best from someone, guess what? You're gonna get let down a lot.
Well, that's the thing. It's not. I don't know. It's a certain. I don't think you're really getting it. It's not expect the worst from people and just get or expect the absolute best from people and then get disappointed. I think that's rather, in a way, kind of childish in a way. But it's just like you have to. Miki, be quiet. Not now. I mean, I'm trying to express a thought. Be quiet because we're talking. And essentially, it's just. Fuck you, Mickey. I lost my train of thought now. God damn it. We're talking about morals and morality and cynicism versus optimism. Okay, and basically, yeah, no, I'm not talking about you. But, yeah, this whole idea that it's, don't expect the best from people, just talk to the best in people. See them as people, and don't, oh, this person is probably a shit cunt. Or just like.
No, I mean, there's a difference between going in, like, thinking that people are horrible, and, like, there's a difference between going into a conversation thinking, okay, this guy's obviously secretly a serial killer, and going into a conversation like, yeah, I shouldn't expect this guy to do me any favors. This guy probably won't do me any favors, but I'm gonna ask anyway.
Yeah, that's it. And it's just like, verify the person through contact, And it's just
well, that's the thing, is, like, I think you're explaining a cynical philosophy.
I don't think it's cynical. I think it's just a realistic point of view on people. And just
that's what cynicism is, motherfucker!
No, it's not. I don't know. Cynicism, I think, is just... I guess it depends where you fall down upon it. It's just like...
Well, like, alright. The ultimate cynic was Diogenes. And one of my favorite stories about Diogenes is he stood outside a whorehouse yelling, "A good whore is like poisoned honey. A good whore is like poisoned honey. A good whore is like poisoned honey," until someone gave him some money to shut him up. And then he kept yelling, "A good whore is like poisoned honey. A good whore is like poisoned honey. And a good whore is like poisoned honey," until someone gave him some more money to shut him up. And he kept doing that and doing that and doing that until he had enough money that he walked into the whorehouse. That's Diogenes. He knew what to expect from people and what people would expect from him, and then he...
That was retarded! What the fuck? He could... Like, sure that might work the first time, but the second time, the fucking owner of the whorehouse will come at you with a stick. Get the fuck out of here!
Why not? It worked. He got the owner money, too.
I think he fucking lied. I think he got his ass kicked, and then just like, yeah, I made enough money to go into the... It sounds like bullshit to me. It's like, you gotta get your ass kicked.
Oh, dude, Diogenes has tons of stories like that. Alright, the ultimate story of Diogenes, then. Okay. Alexander the Great, most powerful man in the fucking world at that time, comes to Athens. All the philosophers and scientists and just all the higher-ups of society go to greet Alexander, and they all start asking for, "Oh, will you grant me this? Will you do this for me? Blah, blah, blah." And Alexander looks around and he goes, "Where's this Diogenes that I've heard so much about?" And they go, "Oh, he isn't here." He's like, "Well, someone get him." And they go, "He won't come." And he's like, "Okay. If Diogenes will not come to Alexander, Alexander will come to Diogenes." So, Alexander and his royal fucking guard go walking around the city looking for Diogenes and find him laying in the sun in a fucking barrel wearing nothing but a goddamn loincloth. And Alexander the Great says, "Diogenes, I'm Alexander the Great, I've come to speak with you." Diogenes doesn't fucking acknowledge him. And then he goes, "Diogenes, I'm the most powerful man in the world. If you tell me what you want, no matter what it is, I will get it for you." Diogenes says, "I want you to get out of my sunlight." And the men around Alexander start laughing and poking at him. And you gotta realize, Alexander could have had him fucking killed for this. The most powerful man in the world, no one would have batted an eye at it. But Alexander shushed all his men and said, "If I were not Alexander, I would be Diogenes." And before you say, "Oh, he just made that up," Diogenes didn't write down anything, didn't tell any stories about himself or anything. These are all things that other people at the time were around to witness and wrote down first-hand sources. Diogenes is the ultimate cynic, and he didn't expect anything.
Whoa, stop. Wait. In that case, then everything that was said about Jesus is true.
Well, certainly. I mean, all historical sources are completely up to whether or not you want to believe the situation. The difference is, fucking Jesus was performing magic. Diogenes was just doing shit.
Well, what's the difference between that? Back then, magic...
What's the difference between him and Socrates? Was Socrates a real person?
I don't know.
Was Alexander the Great a real person?
Sure.
Okay, so what's your point?
I don't know.
All historical sources, until you get to the point where you actually have fucking skeletons and physical evidence, is completely just, this person said this person wrote down this.
Then what's the point? I mean, he just wanted the guy to get out of his son.
The point is, he was the ultimate cynic.
How was that cynical? It was just like a motherfucker who didn't give a shit. I mean...
Exactly. That's Diogenes was the ultimate cynic. Diogenes chose to live as a homeless person to prove the point that he didn't need all these modern trappings of society. That people were just lying to themselves, trying to make themselves feel better about the reality of situations. The reality is, you're still a fucking animal living in a fancy cave.
Sure. I mean, and you could have been an animal living in a fancy cave. You could have a TV, man. You could have a woman. I mean, just because...
Yeah, but, the point was that there was no difference to him.
Well,
is the point
he's a dumbass, then. What the fuck?
Fuck you. Diogenes is great. No, the point I'm making
sure,
is...
okay, I get the whole, that's a bad motherfucking move. I get it. It's cool. It's badass. But to me, it's just like, okay, you just proven you have the logic of a teenage boy.
No.
I mean,
no.
Yeah, man, totally, man.
Fuck you. Alright, no, listen. The point is, the fucking point
you told me to go fuck myself because I think Diogenes
Diogenes is one of my fucking heroes of philosophy.
Of course he is.
He is. He is a man that lived his philosophy, which is an incredibly hard...
And totally lived his dream, bro. He didn't...
Fuck you. If you're not gonna fucking let me talk, then I'm just gonna hang up on you.
Fuck you.
My point is... My fucking point is, if you'll let me finish, you goddamn cunt face, is that the man lived his philosophy, and he was the ultimate cynic. And he didn't expect things from people. He expected people to act like people. And he didn't expect, the best out of them, and he didn't expect the worst out of them. He expected them to do what was in their best interests at whatever point in time.
That's good. That's exactly what it was. Good for him.
That's cynicism, Milan. That is cynicism. Yeah. Took 20 fucking minutes to get there, but we got there. You good now?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm just...
Okay. Jesus Christ, you won't fucking listen to me. You have your own definition of cynicism in your head, and you won't fucking let me make my point. It's like, no, cynicism's just really immature. No, it's fucking realistic.
Mm.
And the point I'm making overall is I find that we'll go out and explore the galaxy and everything will be great, technology will solve all our problems, to be very, it's just replacing heaven, it's replacing the magic of heaven with the assurances of technology.
Well, it's not really, you don't...
No, certainly technology has granted some very, from a subjective viewpoint, good things for humanity. Again, you're still a fucking animal living in a fancy cave. But it's certainly granted some positive benefits for humanity from a subjective human point of view. If not eating raw meats that you work for hours to catch is better than eating, cooked meat, or is not better than eating cooked meat. No, it's certainly done that good things for humanity from that perspective, but I just resist this idea that going out and exploring the stars and putting all our faith into technology to solve all our problems for us is any better than, fucking moon worship and rain dances.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, yes, I'm not putting faith in technology. I mean, humanity could very well just die out and be another failed experiment of the universe. But I'm like, why would you want to focus on that? Sure, that's a definite possibility that, yes, humanity most likely...
I'm not focusing on it. It's just I'm skeptical. I'm a skeptic. I'm a cynical skeptic, and that's, not a very rare combination.
I guess a skeptical... I don't know. It's just like... like, I'm a, sane mix of skepticism and optimism because, yes, the obvious fact, well, I don't know. How can you just assume the worst of people?
I'm not assuming the worst of people. I'm assuming people will do what's in their best interests.
Well, why does that always have to mean that it's bad? Like, why?
No, it doesn't always have to mean that it's bad. It can mean a good thing, but it often means a bad thing. So,
Sure.
like I said, sometimes
just hope
like,
for the best.
You take people on their own terms, and sometimes you get to be pleasantly surprised. That is the benefit of cynicism.
I guess so, but I don't know. It's just, there's this saying in Russian, "Собака бывает, собака," I forget how it goes, but "Собака бывает кусачей, только от жизни собачьей." Essentially, a dog is only a dog because it had the life of a dog, and so it reacts like a dog because it had the life of a dog. And that kind of translates to humans. If you were raised if you were raised shitty, if you would act shitty back to everyone else. But I'm just like, that's not the case for me. I mean, at least I don't think so.
Like I said, it's not expecting anything from people except for them to act like people. You expect people to act like people, and sometimes you get to be pleasantly surprised when they act better.
I guess so. I don't know. This is very
to tie this back to Seven Samurai. You have all these like they go into town and everyone's hiding because they're afraid they're gonna the samurai gonna rape their daughters and shit. And the one guy makes his daughter cut off her hair because he's expecting the worst, and guess what? They don't.
Yeah.
So he gets to be pleasantly surprised, and he gets to kind of feel shitty for going way too far with expecting the worst from them, because he was expecting the worst. He wasn't expecting them to act like people. He was expecting them to act like monsters. There's a difference. There's being a cynic, and then there's just being a pessimist. Those are two different things.
Okay, I guess so.
You're talking about cynicism as if it's equal with pessimism, and it's not.
I don't know. I guess it's just from my perspective. I guess from my perspective, cynicism is looked upon like optimism. From a well.
They're not opposing views. Those are two very different things, and I think that's important to acknowledge. Is cynicism, pessimism, and optimism is like cynicism and optimism aren't even really opposing views, because you can be a cynical optimist. That's not a contradictory term. You cannot be a pessimistic optimist. And you definitely cannot be a pessimistic Optimus Prime.
Haha!
No, but Seven Samurai, in a lot of ways, it shows that. It's like these guys are doing it, in some cases for themselves, but really just because it seems like a good idea at the time. And the guys, the villagers go into town, they're hoping for the best, and the one samurai, kicks the shit out of them after they buy him a good meal and everything. And so they're disappointed by that, and they're really discouraged about asking other samurai, but they keep trying, and then they're pleasantly surprised when it works out.
Yeah.
It's one of those interesting things, this idea of cynicism being a realistic viewpoint on people, and optimism, I think, being an overly hopeful viewpoint on people. Because, optimism, the cliche way to define that is you always see the glass as half full. But if you're living in a village where, bandits are coming and they're going to steal all of the food that you've been working for months to grow and hours in the fields harvesting and planting and sowing the fields and all that stuff. You've been working your ass off for months to do all this, and then bandits are going to come after all your hard labor, and they're going to steal all the food, and they're going to take anything of value in your village, and they're going to kidnap your wife and take her away too. What is there to look at that's half full? What is there positive in that situation? A cynical viewpoint is there's nothing positive right now, but I can do something about it to make it better, or at least I can try.
That's a beautiful thing you just said. But if you just look at the world through purely negative eyes, like, oh, sure, everything might be shit, but if you only focus on that, then why don't we just all slit our own throats? You know,
that's pessimism. That's not cynicism. Cynicism is acknowledging the reality of the situation. Cynicism is, hey, you know, I'm sitting back, I'm enjoying my beer and my 4K television. Yeah, this shit's pretty good right now. I don't see any need to act to change it. You know, what about self-fulfillment? Yeah, I could probably work on that some more, but for right now, I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, you're confusing cynicism with pessimism, and they're not the same thing. You can be a cynical pessimist, and you can be a cynical optimist. Those are two different things. Cynicism is not on a scale between optimism and pessimism. It's its own independent realm of thought.
Okay, then. In that case, then sure, I guess I'm an optimistic cynic.
Yeah, and I'm a skeptical cynic. I'm like, so when we get to the technology thing, I'm like, yeah, you're just replacing this idea of technological, you know, get out of jail free card, technological, oh, it'll solve all our problems.
I'm not saying it's going to solve all our problems. I mean, things are going to get really weird. That's all I'm saying. Things will get weird, and the best thing we can do is try to, you know, push the culture to something more positive. It could go either way. Sure, in certain, you know, if you give people the ability to manipulate their genes and turn into half man, half animal creatures, like in Batman Beyond, like, like, of course, some people are going to do it to, like, say, I want to be a half man, half rhinoceros to be strong enough to withstand, you know, the gravitational strength of Mars or whatever. Some real high-minded concept type of bullshit. Or I want to have the, you know, the regenerative, you know, abilities of a lizard or whatever. Or people just want, like, I want to look like a tiger because I think that's kill. You know? Right. People are just going to do stupid shit with the technology that they're given, and some people are going to use that technology to benefit mankind and themselves and the, you know, the species overall, and other people are just going to just dick around with it or just do something horrible with it. People are...
Yeah, Heidegger talked about that, where we're building a society of automatons, and credit cards didn't exist for him yet, but basically people are going to become extensions of their credit cards. And never forget, Heidegger was a Nazi, so always take everything he says with just a giant fucking grain of salt.
Sure.
But no,
my favorite Nazi story.
I think
one second. My favorite Nazi story that you've ever told me was. Let's not. You know what? Fuck it. Let's not talk about Nazis anymore.
Yeah. Anyway, like, I think you would like Star Trek, Milan, because, I mean, I've enjoyed some bits of it here and there, but it's the overall philosophy of this idea that this, you know, non-interventionist, pacifist philosophy of preserving cultures and scientific study, this like basis of what Star Trek is built on, I just kind of find irksome because no one ever truly... It's questioned from time to time in varying ways, but it always ends up winning out. So, like, if I ever get to direct anything Star Trek or write anything Star Trek, they're going to go to the future and their society Starfleet's going to have completely collapsed upon itself. Just so they have to deal with that, with the fact that it turns out you're not always right.
The nerds are gonna go after you. They're like, "Yeah, fuck, how dare you?"
Yeah, no, like I think you would like it because it is that eternal.
I don't know. I understand that, but just like Star Trek, like I'm already a fucking comic book geek and I'm 22, and I'm already a goofy motherfucker. I don't need that extra stigma of Star Trek along with it. And I don't know, Star Trek seems a little bit too white bread for me. I mean, I'm more of a Grant Morrison fan. I'm like, oh, Mom, I'm going to show you some crazy shit.
Dude, they go into the universe and find God, like, every other week.
Well, it's always some fucking space gods, like, I don't know, it's white man's interpretation of a space god, and I want to see a giant octopus thing.
They run into Apollo once.
Oh, well, in that case, I'll just read Flash. Fuck it. If I want to see Apollo, I'll just read Flash or Wonder Woman. The gods still live in our media, brah.
Mm-hmm. It's something that I think you'd like because you like the general philosophy of it.
I
It's basically like the world after it's humanity after Superman. Think of it that way.
Oh, okay. In that case, then sure. But then, like, where's the struggle?
Well, the struggle is dealing with that when the situation seems like you can't.
That's interesting. I might check it out.
Yeah, because I mean that's basically what's going on every week is, oh, what do? We can't break the non-interference thing. Well, we'll find a way, and if not, we'll make it work anyway because this is the right viewpoint. And then Mark Twain shows up for an episode and calls them all conquerors, and like the thing that annoys the shit out of me about Star Trek, and I've just got so many thoughts on Star Trek since I just finished TNG. The thing that annoys the shit out of me about Star Trek is they'll always say, "Oh, we solved that problem," and they'll either never say how they solved a significant problem with society, or their explanation will be future technology that doesn't fucking exist and is, for all intents and purposes, magic. So like what episode they go, oh, we don't enslave animals to get their meat anymore. Well, what do you use? We have replicators. It's a little box where you go up to it and you say what you want to eat and it magically produces it for you. Like, yeah, there's a workable solution.
Yep. So everyone's a vegan in fucking Star Trek.
No. They eat meat. It's synthesized. Like, the way it works is the replicators take anything that has ever been transported, and they're able to recreate it, at a whim.
So wait a second. So basically, every time you use the teleporter, you're recreated? You die and you get reformed?
Yeah, that is actually the way in which teleporters have to work.
That's fucking scary, man. Fuck that.
Yeah. That's why McCoy doesn't like him. No, but so you think about that, and everyone's eating the same chicken, which is weird. Like anytime you order a fried chicken, you're having the exact same fried chicken.
You know, there's a story written by Neil Gaiman called American Gods.
Yeah, you've talked about it.
But since we're talking about chicken, you know, they can't. The reason they call Kentucky Fried Chicken, you know, they call it KFC nowadays, is because legally they can't use the word chicken because
That's funny.
Because what they've created is just this gigantic, horrible centipede that's just like, you know, torsos and wings of chickens just all ass to mouth glued together, grown in a vat. And so it's this horrifying, you know, it's covered with fucking little bits of eyes and malformed beaks and shit, and it makes noise like, yeah! And they can't...
Is this actually true, or is it something Neil Gaiman made up?
I don't know. It's a rumor. It's a thing that very well could be true in this crazy-ass world of ours. And it's just like...
I'm pretty sure they call it chicken.
No, well, it's just like this horrible monstrosity, and they can't legally call it a chicken because whatever the fuck that thing is that they're carving off wings of, it's not chicken anymore. It's some horrible monstrosity. And it's just like...
Nah, I'm pretty sure that's fake.
No. That's what happens. Like, I just ruined chicken for every single black person listening. Like, you're...
No, you'd never be able to do that.
Oh, you racist sack of shit.
Let's get back to the movie itself, because I think there are some other things I want to say just about the movie itself. So overall, I did enjoy this flick, but God, it is really long. But it's long in a way that's like, I want to say you could cut it down, but I can't think of what needs to be cut out of it.
Yeah.
Is the problem.
It's one of those things, it's one of those old school cinema concepts where the movie doesn't have to have a set running time. You know? It's just like, we've become so, like, trained to, you know, take in that idea of, like, a movie has a first act, second act, third act. That's just a delivery system of a story that's, you know, that we found to be marketable. But you can, like, movies can, like, imagine a movie this long, like, the fucking Dark Knight Returns, or, no, I don't know. What the fuck am I talking about? I don't know.
No, it's just like, it feels like you could cut something out of it. I just don't know what.
Yeah, it's just a thing that's so complete.
It's just a really long movie, though, and, like, that made it really hard to sit through, and, like I said, I didn't get the chance to finish it. It just it wasn't in the cards because it was so hard for me to get a hold of in the first place. But yeah, just like that's the other big thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned about this is I enjoyed it, but it's still a really long movie, and I don't think it has to be as long as it is.
Just smoke a doobie and just watch a long movie.
Well, that would make it longer, though.
Not really, no. What weed makes things pass slower. What weed does, it makes you lose track of time. And so, but when you have something to focus on, that thing doesn't seem as long. You just completely take in that thing. You just focus on a thing so completely that time doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
Try it out. It's fun.
No, I don't smoke. I don't partake of anything intoxicating.
Ever?
Nope. Don't drink. Don't smoke.
When I get to America, I'm gonna get you fucked up.
Dude, I don't do it.
Well, once in you're gonna.
No, I don't. End of story. I do not.
Ever?
No.
Not even once. Like never once in your life have you smoked.
No, I've done it. I smoked. I took a hit once off of a pipe, and I have allergies, so I can't do weed because, like, I just started sneezing up a fucking storm. It was kind of like that scene in that one Woody Allen movie where he sneezes on the cocaine, but it was with weed. I just immediately triggered my allergies and just completely just sneezed for like 10 minutes straight. So it was kind of dorky, and then I drank some fucking beer once and thought it tasted like shit.
Beer does taste like shit. You know what I recommend? Go to your...
No, I don't care.
Well, just hear me out. Go to your local bar and ask for the gayest drink in the house.
No. I'm not gonna drink. Dude, you gotta understand how I grew up. My brother would fucking come home drunk every night of the week when he was in, like, high school and going to college and shit. And all I would see is the side of it where they'd be, throwing up in the front yard or, like, stumbling down the stairs, breaking the walls and shit. And I was like, I never wanted to do that. Ever.
Well, you don't have to do that. Drugs don't make you do that. Your brother...
No, that's the point of doing this of smoking or getting drunk or whatever is to get inebriated, and it is to lose yourself in that, and it's fucking dumb.
Well, your brother was a dumbass, to begging your pardon, so you can't really judge it from the perspective of someone who was a complete and utter fucking cunt. No offense.
No, fuck that guy. That was just the only exposure I ever had growing up to what it was to drink or smoke or whatever was to turn yourself into a fucking jackass, and I just have no desire to do that.
Oh man, trust me. Once I get to America, we're gonna hang out in New York.
We're gonna hang out, and you can smoke and drink all you want. I'm gonna stop hanging out with you once you get boring. Like, that's the thing no one fucking realizes. Drunk people, high people, you're not fucking interesting.
Not at all. No, it's when you.
They're like giant babies.
Yeah, but babies are cute.
No, they're not. They're fucking annoying and ugly.
Oh, god damn it. Oh.
Now that's a pessimistic thing to say.
Oh my god, you fucking monster. Oh.
Here, let me round this out with some other pessimistic things to say. Old Yeller is my favorite Disney movie because the dog fucking dies.
That's such a stereotypically cynical thing to say. It's just like, yeah, man.
Oh, that's not cynical. That's pessimistic.
Whatever, man.
The way you learn the difference between words is to use them differently. They're not all.
Fuck that. All words mean the same thing.
Potato.
Exactly.
No, you were supposed to say, how dare you say that about my mother. Okay, I think this has reached its ultimate silliness. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about the movie?
It's beautifully shot.
Oh, definitely. Beautifully shot, even though it's showing, like, awful things sometimes. Yeah, I think that's about it. Let's go ahead and rate it real quick then. This ended up not so much being a review of the movie, just like a discussion of what the movie makes you think about. Because I don't think that you can really review this movie anymore like we talked about at the beginning, because you've seen it in so many other things at this point. I don't imagine you could take it on its own terms anymore. So it's just more what this movie makes you think about that we end up discussing, which I'm okay with.
Me too. How much do you give this film?
I will give this film 4 out of 5 bowls of rice.
I give this film 5 out of 5 homicidal old ladies looking for revenge.
Damn it, yours is better. You thought that one up for a while, didn't you?
Not really, I just pulled it out of my ass.
Nice. Okay, everyone. Thanks for listening. This is a lot of fun. Next week, we'll be discussing... it's been a while since we've done a possible plots, so we're going to do a possible plots for Marvel's Spider-Man. Marvel's got the Spider-Man license for the films, basically, so we're going to discuss what Marvel's going to be doing with Spider-Man and what we would like to see Marvel do with Spider-Man. And I'm sure they're going to listen to the podcast and make a movie based on all of the points we make. I'm 100% sure that's totally going to happen.
Yeah, like...
Because I'm an optimist.
Yep, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yep. Anyway, everyone, thank you for listening. I am Sid Part 2. I am the Philosopher.
And I am the Madman.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.